After a peaceful Sunday afternoon of folding laundry and making tea, the fever came, suddenly. My body burned, every joint aching. I hated asking for help, but tonight I couldn't even stand long enough to boil water. So, with trembling hands, I called my daughter, Olivia. She answered quickly, the sound of typing in the background. I forced a smile into my voice. "Sweetheart, I think I'm sick. Could you come over just for a little while?" There was a pause. Then her voice rushed and sharp. "Mom, I can't drop everything right now. I've got deadlines, I've got meetings. I'll just send you some food, okay?" The words landed like ice water. No hesitation, no warmth. I froze. Food? Was that all I was worth? I remembered nights when she was little, fever burning her skin, and I never once said I can't. Not once. Rain tapped against the window, steady and cold. My lips quivered, but no words came. Just the sting in my chest. I am Margaret Turner, 62, a widow in a small apartment on the east side of the city. And that was the moment I realized love can vanish not with anger, but with indifference. Subscribe if you like this kind of story. Later. I sat curled up in my silent apartment. I want to call her back. For a second, I hesitated before dialing. Then, "Olivia, I'm feeling a little better now, but could you come over for dinner one evening? I just want to sit with you, listen to you talk, the way we used to." On the other end, there was silence. I heard the sound of typing stop. "Mom, you know I love you, but things are insane right now. Deadlines, meetings. I barely see my own husband." I let out a faint, shaky laugh. "I know you're busy, but love and care aren't something that only exists when there's free time. Is it?" Olivia was quiet for a few seconds before her voice softened. "I'm not saying no, Mom. I'm just scared, okay? If something happens to you and your finances aren't in order, it'll all fall on me and Daniel. That's why I want to help now, make sure things are safe." My chest tightened. She said she was scared, but not of losing me. Scared of the trouble money might cause. Had I raised her to value stability so much that she forgot about warmth? I asked myself. Then I steadied my voice, though it trembled. "Olivia, I didn't call today to talk about bank accounts. I just wanted you here, with me. That's all." She paused. Then her voice dropped lower, more earnest. "I know, Mom. And I hate that I can't be there the way you want. But please believe me, asking to be on your account, it's not about control. It's about protecting you. That's how I know to love." My heart sank. She truly believed love meant managing money. She thought that was protection. But to me, it felt like being locked inside a cold safe. Since when did love become paperwork and signatures? I couldn't reply. I let the silence stretch, heavier than the fevered nights I had just endured. Olivia's voice returned tighter now. "Mom, why are you making this harder than it needs to be? I'm trying to protect you, and you're acting like I don't care." My throat clenched. Protect me? With forms, signatures, and joint accounts? Where was the protection when I lay sick in bed calling out for company? I steadied my voice, sharper. "No, Olivia, you're protecting my money, not me." I thought she might argue back. Instead, her sigh came through the line, sharp, impatient. "You just don't understand. I don't have time for this right now." And then, click. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, my reflection faint in the black screen. She ended the call. She chose her time over my words. The room felt colder, my chest tighter. I realized the real distance between us wasn't the miles across town. It was the space between what I needed and what she chose to give. That night, I lay curled up in my small apartment, the blanket pulled tight around my shoulders. Through the thin walls, I could hear the muffled laughter of the neighbors' television. Their joy bled into my silence like salt on an open wound. I closed my eyes and thought of Richard, my husband. I could almost feel the dip in the mattress where he used to lie, the faint smell of aftershave that had lingered long after he was gone. When I was sick back then, he would sit by my side with a damp cloth, whispering, "Don't worry, Maggie. I've got you." Now, all I had was the echo of that promise and the faint buzz of the refrigerator. For years, I had lived with one mission: to save. Every coupon clipped, every penny pinched, every overtime shift taken, so that Olivia and Daniel would never have to struggle. I thought that sacrifice was love. I thought they would see it, feel it, carry it forward. But here I was, fevered and alone, staring at a takeout box my daughter left at the door. Was this what all my saving bought me? A meal in a bag and a daughter too busy to step inside? I thought of Olivia as a little girl, running to me with scraped knees, her tears soaking into my blouse as I held her. Back then, she didn't care about safety or accounts or control. She only wanted me. When did that change? When did she stop needing me and start needing what I owned? My chest ached, not from sickness, but from the weight of realization. I gave up so much of myself for their tomorrow. And yet, when my tomorrow arrived, not one of them was here. I whispered into the darkness, almost as if Richard could hear me. Did I do it wrong? Was I foolish to think money could keep us close? The TV next door burst into a round of applause. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the sound seeped through anyway, louder than ever. And in that noise, a thought cut through. Maybe love can't be saved in bank accounts. Maybe I've been saving the wrong thing all along. A week later, when the fever had lifted enough for me to walk, I put on my coat and went down to the bank. The glass doors slid open with a hush, and the scent of disinfectant mixed with the faint clatter of keyboards. I handed my card across the counter. "I'd like to check my balance." The young teller tapped quickly, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Yes, Mrs. Whitmore, you have a savings balance of $148,326. I exhaled slowly. That number wasn't wealth by the world's measure, but to me it was everything. Every night Richard stayed late at the factory. Every grocery bill I trimmed with coupons. Every holiday trip we never took. It was the sum of a life lived frugally, carefully, faithfully. As I nodded, the teller leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice as though offering me a favor. "Your daughter, Olivia, was in here last month. She mentioned, she suggested you might want to consider adding her name to the account. For convenience, in case anything happened. We could prepare the paperwork today." My fingers froze against the counter. Olivia? She'd already spoken to them? The teller gave a polite smile, tapping his pen against the desk. Tap, tap, tap. Each sound echoed like a hammer against my ribs. "It really is a smart move," he said, "to avoid complications down the line." Complications. There was that word again. I felt the blood drain from my face. To her, I'm no longer a mother. I am a complication waiting to be solved. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'll think about it." As I walked out, the glass doors closed behind me with a hiss, sealing me back into the cold air. I clutched my bag tighter. For the first time, the weight of money felt heavier than the weight of loneliness. When my fever finally broke, I dressed myself slowly and walked to the bank. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee, polished floors gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. I told myself I was only here to check my balance, to make sure all those years of saving were still sitting safely in my account. The teller, a young woman with hair tied in a neat bun, pulled up my information on her screen. "Mrs. Collins," she said politely, "you have 2 accounts with us. Your checking holds $3,482.77, and your savings." She paused, glancing at the number. "Currently stands at $142,900.25. Would you like a printout?" Hearing it aloud felt strange. That number was the shape of my life. Decades of ironing other people's shirts, cleaning other people's homes, tucking away every dollar I could. It was supposed to be security. It was supposed to mean something. I nodded weakly. "Yes, please." As the printer whirred, the teller leaned forward with a smile too practiced to be genuine. "Your daughter came in a few months ago, didn't she? Olivia, right? She asked about the option of adding her name to this account, a joint ownership to make things simpler in case of emergencies." My breath caught. I clutched my purse tighter, the leather creaking under my grip. Around us, the bank hummed with quiet conversations, but her words roared in my ears. A joint account, my money, my life's work. Not just mine anymore. She slid the slip of paper toward me, the numbers printed in neat black ink. "If you'd like, we can set it up today. It only takes a signature. That way, your children can step in at any time if you're unable." I stared at the paper. My name alone, Margaret Collins. I imagined another name, Olivia Price, printed right next to mine. My daughter's hand reaching not for me, but for this. My lips pressed into a thin line. Did she really come here, asking this without even telling me? I forced a smile for the teller, though my voice shook. No, not today. I'll think about it. She nodded politely and turned to her screen, but I noticed how her eyes lingered for a beat too long, as if she pitied me. I folded the slip carefully, tucking it into my purse, but inside my thoughts were loud, jagged. After all these years, was I just a balance sheet waiting for someone else to sign on? I was still reeling from what I'd heard at the bank. Olivia had asked about adding her name to my account. My savings, my life's work. The words echoed like a hammer in my skull. I walked down Main Street, clutching my purse tighter than usual, afraid someone might see through the leather to the numbers inside. That's when I smelled it. Coffee, fresh and dark, with the faint sweetness of pastries. A new sign swung gently in the wind. Helen's Place. Coffee and comfort. Helen. It had been decades, but the name pulled me inside before I had time to think. The bell chimed overhead, and there she was behind the counter, hair silver now, but eyes just as bold as I remembered from the mill. "Margaret," she said, breaking into a grin. "For heaven's sake, it's really you." We hugged, her arms strong, steady. Mine felt fragile, like I might splinter in her grip. "You look good," she said, pulling back to study me. Then her brow furrowed. "Well, you look tired. Pale. What's going on?" I shook my head quickly. "Oh, nothing. Just age, I suppose." Helen gave me the same skeptical look she used to give the foreman when he shorted our wages. She wiped her hands on her apron, led me to a corner table, and set down a cup before me. "Try saying that again with a straight face," she said, crossing her arms. I wrapped my hands around the mug, clinging to its warmth. "I've been sick," I admitted. "But I'm fine now." Helen leaned closer. "And?" Her eyes didn't let me escape. I stared down into the coffee, steam curling into my face. "I went to the bank this week." My throat tightened. They told me Olivia had been in, asking about a joint account, putting her name with mine, to make things easier. Helen's eyebrows shot up. "She went behind your back?" I bit my lip, staring at the window where the world bustled by, strangers laughing, carrying shopping bags. I lowered my voice. "She said she was scared, but not of losing me. Scared of the money, of the complications I felt, the words scrape out of me like a confession. Since when did love become paperwork?" The cafe noise swirled around us, the hiss of steaming milk, the clink of cups, but in that moment it all seemed distant. Helen reached across the table, her hand steady on mine. "Margaret," she said softly. "You know, when my husband died," she began, her voice steady but low, "everyone told me the same thing. Be careful, Helen, don't touch the money, save it all for the kids." I looked at her, startled. "And you didn't?" She gave a small laugh, shaking her head. "At first I tried. I kept every penny locked away. And you know what it bought me? Silence. Long, empty days. A fridge full of leftovers I didn't even want to eat. The kids never came around more just because I was hoarding bills in a drawer." Her words stung. I thought of my own freezer at home, packed with meals Olivia had ordered in, stacked neatly, untouched. I whispered, "That's what I've been doing, saving. So they won't struggle. I thought it was love." Helen leaned forward, eyes sharp. "No, Margaret. Love isn't money sitting in a vault. Love is presence, it's time, it's warmth. You give all your living to your savings, and one day your kids inherit numbers. But they'll have no memory of you." The hiss of the espresso machine filled the pause, loud, insistent. I gripped my cup tighter, my hands trembling. Was that what Olivia saw when she looked at me now? A figure on a ledger instead of a mother? Helen stood, went back to the counter, and a minute later returned with a cappuccino, the foam still steaming. She slid it in front of me with a small smile. "You see this? I spent money to make this place real. People said I was crazy, but every morning I wake up with a reason to be here. This cafe isn't just a business, Margaret. It's my life, poured into every cup." I stared at the drink, the swirl of milk and coffee like a small universe. She set her hand on the saucer, firm, certain. "Money isn't love, Margaret. If you give it all away before you've lived, you're just leaving your children a map to a place you never dared to go yourself." The sentence cut through me, my throat tightened, and I had no reply. Inside, my thoughts screamed, she lives and I endure. She spends and I hoard. She wakes up with purpose and I wait for phone calls that never come. I lifted the cup to my lips, the foam brushing against me, sweet and hot. And for the first time in years, I wondered, what if I've been saving the wrong thing all along? I sat at my kitchen table, the tin box of ledgers open before me. The pages smelled faintly of dust and ink, lined with neat rows of numbers I had kept since the first paycheck Richard and I earned. Rent, food, children's shoes. Always the children first, always less for myself. I remembered the winter Olivia needed a new coat. I patched my own until the sleeves were more thread than fabric, but she walked to school warm. I remembered Daniel's textbooks, how I skipped lunches so I could slip a 20 into his backpack. And every time I told myself it was worth it, because one day my children would know how much I gave. Now, staring at those numbers, I felt sick, because the teller's words still rang in my ears. Your daughter asked about a joint account. Olivia, my Olivia, who used to climb into my lap with scraped knees, now wanted her name next to mine, on the account I had starved and scrimped to build. She wasn't asking for my stories, my love, my presence. She was asking for the keys to my cage. I slammed the ledger shut. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. My chest tightened with a bitter truth. I had spent a lifetime saving for them, and now they treated me like an obstacle to their inheritance. The next day, I walked into the real estate office with the old house keys clenched in my fist. That house, Richard's laughter still echoing in the walls, the children's height marks still scratched into the doorway, had been sitting empty for years. I had been too sentimental to let it go, but now, sentiment felt like another chain. The young agent looked up, pen poised. Mrs. Collins, how can I help you today? I want to sell, I said. My voice cracked but did not falter. His brows lifted. Sell the property outright? You know, you could keep it under a trust for your children. Many clients your age create a revocable living trust. That way, the house passes smoothly without probate. It's the safest route. I shook my head. No trust, no joint ownership. I want it gone. He hesitated. Are you sure? With current market value, you'd be looking at around $280,000. Keeping it could add stability for your heirs. Heirs. That word tasted bitter. I tightened my grip on the keys until the metal cut my palm. This house isn't for them, it's for me. And I'm choosing to sell. He studied me for a moment, then slowly pushed the forms across the desk. Then we'll start the listing. You'll need to sign a standard purchase agreement when the buyer comes forward. Do you want me to recommend an attorney to review it? My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. An attorney, a trust, probate, all the language of ownership. Everyone thinking ahead to after I'm gone. But for once I'm thinking of while I'm still here. The tip of the pen touched the paper, and I let out a long, shaky breath. For the first time in decades, I wasn't saving for someone else. I was setting myself free. The folding chairs creaked in the basement of the community center. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and old paper. At the front, the instructor lifted a piece of chalk and scrawled across the board in heavy strokes, "Money sitting still loses value." The chalk snapped in half with a sharp crack. One piece rolled across the floor and stopped at my shoe. I bent down to pick it up, staring at the jagged edge in my hand. It felt like holding a fragment of myself, worn down, brittle, despite years of careful keeping. Inflation averages 2 to 3% a year, the man continued, tapping the board with his marker. Most savings accounts pay less than 1%, which means your money isn't growing, it's shrinking. I felt the words strike me harder than any fever. A lifetime of clipping coupons, of whispering maybe next time to myself in store aisles, yet all those sacrifices had been quietly eroded by numbers I never saw. He turned back to the class. Rule of 72. Divide 72 by your interest rate. That's how many years it takes for money to double. At 1%, 72 years. But inflation at 3%? Your purchasing power gets cut in half in just 24. Pens scratched across notebooks. Beside me, an older woman whispered, "My bank gave me 0.5% last year." Her voice shook. I nodded, for once feeling less alone in my quiet fear. The instructor passed out worksheets, columns for rent, groceries, medicine, transportation. Before you invest, build a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. Think of it as your life raft. Without it, you're swimming with no shore in sight. I filled in the numbers with a stiff hand. When I reached medicine, my pen paused. I had spent decades calculating for my children, never once for myself. A blot of ink bled onto the page, round and dark, like a teardrop I refused to shed. "Next step," he said, his voice steady. "Automate. Even a small transfer, every month, into a high-yield account. Money doesn't just need a place. It needs momentum." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I set the half-stick of chalk in my palm and curled my fingers around it. Powder clung to my skin, white in the cracks of my hands. For the first time in years, my breath filled my lungs fully. I wasn't just a clerk of my family's survival anymore. I was a student again, learning not how to save, but how to live. Helen spread the papers across the cafe counter, her apron dusted with flour. Outside, late sunlight spilled through the windows, painting long gold lines over the wood. "It's simple," she said, tapping the first page. "We formed an LLC, limited liability. You contribute $5,000 toward a $50,000 expansion. That makes you a 10% partner in this round, but your risk stops there. If the cafe fails, you lose what you put in, nothing more." Her voice was calm, businesslike, but I barely heard her. My eyes were on the number, $5,000. 5,000 I had held onto like breath, as if letting go would suffocate me. What if it doesn't work? My voice was thinner than I wanted. Helen leaned closer, lowering her tone. "Then you've learned? That's the beauty of starting small. And, Margaret," she paused, her eyes steady, "don't use your lifeboat. Keep your 6-month emergency fund safe. This money? Think of it as your first step onto the dance floor. The music won't wait forever." Her words lodged in my chest. For decades, I had been the woman who watched from the sidelines, counting the cost of every song. Now, here was the invitation. I signed. The pen scraped the paper, and in that instant, a bead of sweat slid down my temple, splashing onto my signature. The ink smeared, a dark ripple across my name. I froze, embarrassed. Helen laughed softly, sliding me a napkin. "That smudge," she said, "is proof you're alive. Contracts don't need to be perfect. People do." I looked at the mark again, blurred yet permanent. My hand still trembled, but my chest felt lighter, as if the weight of years of silence had spilled out with that drop. Behind us, the espresso machine hissed to life, steam rising with a fierce sound. For once, it didn't make me flinch. It felt like applause. Evening slid across the windows. The papers from the cafe lay on my table, the blurred loop of my signature still damp-looking, as if it might lift and fly away. The kettle on the stove muttered to itself, not yet a whistle. A knock, 2 quick taps, then a third, unsure of itself. "Mom, it's me." "Daniel?" I almost didn't move. Fear can make you hide from even the good things, but my feet carried me to the door. He stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets, the same boyish tilt to his shoulders he had at 15 when he'd broken a window and come home to confess. Older now, yes. Tired around the eyes, but present. "You look different," he said. In a good way. I felt my mouth try to be brave. Different is one word. He walked to the table and touched the corner of the top page with one finger, careful not to smear it further. "This is yours." His voice was gentle, not curious, not demanding. Just naming it. Yours. Something in me loosened. "I made tea," I said, as if that counted for hospitality. The kettle began to gather itself, a breath becoming a voice. "Can I—" He moved past me without waiting for an answer, turned off the flame just before the kettle hit a full scream, and poured. He set his phone face down on the counter. We sat. Steam rose between us. "I should have come sooner," he said. "I kept waiting for the right time, and there isn't one, is there?" My chest tightened and softened all at once. "I don't need the right time," I said. "I need you to be a man who loved family." He nodded, swallowing. "I'm not here to fix anything tonight. I just want to be here. If you want silence, we can have silence. If you want to talk about Dad or the time I glued my science project to the dining table, we can do that too." A laugh slipped out of me, the kind that surprises you with its own warmth. "You made me eat cereal on a TV tray for a week." He smiled, the corner of his mouth tipping up the way Richards used to. For a moment, the room filled with a ghost of orange-scented furniture polish, and homework spread like maps across our old table. When did we stop meeting each other in the middle of the day? I wondered. When did our lives start passing notes instead of speaking? Daniel lifted his mug and studied me over the rim. You seem alive, Mom. He searched for the right word. Less careful, more you. Safe isn't the same as alive, I said, and heard the truth of it ring. He set the cup down and, without asking, got up and opened my fridge. Can I make you something? He asked. Something real, not takeout? He pulled out eggs, parsley, a wedge of cheese with a stubborn rind. He moved easily in my kitchen, sleeves pushed up, the pan warming with a low hum. I watched his hands, steady, certain, as he whisked, and realized mine were steady too. Olivia worries, he said over the soft scrape of a spatula, but sometimes worry looks like control. I'm sorry I let silence look like care. It isn't. I breathed in the simple smell of butter and eggs, a scent I hadn't realized I missed. Presence, I thought. This is what it looks like. Not signatures, not plans. A son at a stove, a phone face down, a chair pulled close. He slid the omelet onto a plate and set it in front of me with a seriousness that felt like apology and promise at once. Stay, I said, surprising myself with how easily the word came. Eat with me. Okay, Mom. The apartment didn't seem so small then. The kettle was quiet. Outside, someone laughed on the stairwell. We ate slowly. He asked about my day, not my accounts. I told him about the class, about the woman beside me who whispered her interest rate like a secret. We didn't solve anything. We didn't try. The phone rang just after dusk, sharp and insistent. I almost didn't pick up. But I knew that rhythm, 3 quick chimes, a pause, then another. Olivia. I answered. Mom, she said, breathless, her words clipped. Tell me it's not true. What do you mean? I asked. I just got off the phone with an agent. You sold the house, the one Dad built with his hands. Her voice rose, each syllable like a hammer. Without telling me, without even... Yes, I said quietly. I sold it. My grip tightened around the receiver. For a moment, I saw Richard sanding the banister in that old house, dust catching in his hair like snow, the sharp click of Olivia's nails against a desk. Do you understand what you've done? That house wasn't just bricks. It was security, stability. And you... She stopped, caught her breath. You're spending Dad's legacy like it was pocket change. The words struck like ice water, Dad's legacy, as if Richard had worked only for her inheritance, not for the life we once lived in those walls. I steadied my voice. It was my home too, Olivia, and it's my choice what to do with it now. Her tone hardened. No, Mom, it's not just your choice anymore. If you're not thinking straight, if you're making reckless decisions, someone has to step in before everything's gone. I pressed the phone closer, heart pounding. Reckless. The same labels doctors used for confused patients, the same language bankers used for those who couldn't be trusted with their own accounts. Inside me, something shifted. For years, I'd folded under that tone, half worried she was right, half afraid to lose her love. But not tonight. Olivia, I said, each word deliberate, I am not broken. I am not your ward. I am your mother. And this was my decision. The line went quiet. I could hear her breathing. Fast, shallow, angry. I'll come by tomorrow, she said at last, her voice cold. We're not done with this. The call ended. I lowered the receiver slowly as if it weighed 50 pounds. My hands trembled, but not from fear this time. I sat in the silence, the echo of her words circling me like vultures, reckless, broken, not thinking straight. And beneath them, my own reply still burning in the air. I am your mother. And this was my decision. For the first time in years, my own words felt like armor. Olivia stepped into the apartment, slipped off her coat, and laid it neatly on the chair. She moved straight to the table, opened a folder, and smoothed out a sheet of paper as if preparing for a meeting. Mom, I came because I'm worried, she began, her voice calm, almost gentle. I heard you sold the house, and you've been experimenting, classes, investments. I sat across from her, my hands folded tightly in my lap. I needed to, I said quietly. That house was empty. I don't live in the past. Olivia gave a small smile, tight, not warm. I know, but Mom, you're not young anymore. Things can happen. If something went wrong tomorrow, who handles everything? Who makes sure it doesn't turn into chaos? I held her gaze. You mean, who handles the money? She hesitated, then slid the paper across the table toward me. A joint account, or even a trust. That way it's safe, no confusion. I can help manage it for you. I looked at the page but didn't touch it. I didn't ask for a manager, Olivia. I asked for my daughter. The room went quiet. Olivia leaned forward, her voice softer now, almost pleading. This is me helping. I can't always be here, you know that. Work, deadlines, the constant rush. This is how I can show up. I drew a breath. By putting your name on my account? Her fingers tapped the table, quick and restless. By making sure you don't have to worry. That's the best love I can give you right now. I straightened, my eyes on hers. But love isn't numbers on paper, Olivia. It's presence. It's sitting here like this, isn't it? She bit her lip, looked away for a second, then back with sharper eyes. And what happens if you get sick again? If bills pile up, if Daniel and I are left scrambling? You think presence is going to fix that? Her words landed heavy. Inside, I thought, she doesn't see me. She sees a liability waiting to happen. Mom, she said, her voice lower, heavier, do you even realize what you're risking? You spent decades building a safety net. Dad worked himself to the bone for that house, for that account. And now you're throwing pieces of it away on cafes, classes. Her tone sharpened on the last words, like they were insults. I flinched but steadied myself. It's not throwing away. It's using what I have while I'm still alive. Olivia pushed back her chair with a scrape, the sound harsh in the small apartment. That's reckless. What happens when it's gone? When the bills come due? When the emergencies hit? Do you expect me and Daniel to pick up the pieces? Her eyes were bright now, angry and afraid all at once. I felt my chest tighten. You talk as if I'm already a burden. She froze, lips parting, then snapped the folder shut with a loud slap. You will be if you keep this up. Her voice broke, louder than she meant. She caught herself, closed her eyes briefly, then went on in a clipped tone. I can't watch you unravel everything Dad left behind. I won't. I leaned forward. Oh, Olivia, this isn't about Dad. This isn't about your inheritance. This is about me choosing to live. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The ticking of the wall clock filled the air, unbearably loud. Olivia's jaw tightened. She whispered, but the words cut deep. If you're not thinking straight, maybe I should take control. My thoughts churned. Not thinking straight. Control. Am I just an old woman to her now, one step away from being managed like a bank account? But even as my stomach knotted, something in me stiffened, bracing. Olivia, I said, looking her square in the eye, all your life I taught you to save, to prepare, to think ahead. And you turned that into chains? You call it love, but it is fear dressed in numbers. She shifted, folder tight against her chest. Mom, that's not fair. I'm just trying to make sure nothing falls apart when... I didn't let her finish. You think you're protecting me? Number, you're protecting your comfort, your inheritance, your tidy picture of the future. But listen to me. I leaned forward, my hand flat on the table. I did not work 50 years, bury my husband, and hold this family together, just to be treated like a confused old woman with money to be managed. Her eyes widened. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to help. Don't you see that? I pressed on, my voice growing stronger, resonant in the small room. I am not your liability. I am your mother. And if you think love is paperwork and signatures, then you have forgotten what love really is. Love is presence. Love is sacrifice. Love is sitting at my bedside when I call, not calculating my assets when I'm gone. Olivia's lips trembled. I just don't want to lose you and be unprepared. I straightened, taller than I'd felt in years. You said I might not be thinking straight. But let me tell you this. I would rather die poor and free than live rich in the cage you want to lock me in. The words struck like a gavel in a courtroom. For the first time, Olivia's shoulders sank, not in victory, but in shame. She clutched the folder tighter as if it could shield her, then turned away. At the door, her voice faltered. You'll regret this. I lifted my chin. No, Olivia. You will. When you realize money cannot buy back the moments you've already lost with me. The door slammed. Silence fell heavy, but it was no longer oppressive. It was triumphant. I stood alone, but I stood free. The office was quiet save for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Sunlight streamed through the tall window, laying bright stripes across the mahogany desk. I sat across from Mr. Collins, the lawyer, my hands folded, the weight of decades pressed into this one morning. He adjusted his glasses, reading the draft aloud in his careful, measured tone. The majority of my assets shall be donated to the Foundation for Women Over 50 Entrepreneurs. A modest portion shall be entrusted to my son, Daniel, for his respect and his quiet presence in my life. He paused, glanced at me, then continued. And for my daughter, Olivia. The air tightened. My heart beat steady, not fast. This was the part that mattered most. Colin's voice softened as he read the words I had dictated days earlier. For my daughter who taught me that money can never replace presence, I leave her the chance to build her own life, free of mine. The words hung in the air, heavier than any dollar amount. I picked up the pen. For a moment my hand trembled, not from doubt, but from the enormity of what this meant. For so long my life had been a balance sheet, every dollar tucked away for their tomorrow. And yet, when I called for love, I was handed takeout on the doorstep. I steadied my grip, pressed the pen to the paper, and signed. The scratch of ink was louder than thunder in my ears. When it was done, I set the pen down firmly like a gavel closing a trial. Collins nodded, sliding the papers neatly into their folder. It's official, Mrs. Turner. Your will reflects your wishes clearly. I looked toward the window. Outside, the city moved on, cars crawling, people rushing, the world indifferent. But for me, time felt still. This isn't about punishment, I thought. It's about truth. I cannot buy back the dinners we never shared, the nights I spent alone, but I can leave behind something better than silence, a chance for other women to live before it's too late. The sunlight warmed my face. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's account to be managed. I felt like myself, whole, free. The afternoon sun spilled through the new curtains, warm and golden. My apartment no longer felt like a waiting room for silence. It felt lived in. A vase of fresh tulips brightened the table. Next to it, my notebook lay open, pages filled with neat columns of numbers, scribbled ideas, and plans. I sat at the table, glasses perched on my nose, double-checking the small investment I had made with Helen's Cafe. The figures weren't large, but they were mine. For the first time in years, every dollar I spent felt like a choice, not a concession. The knock at the door startled me. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened it. Daniel? I blinked, surprised. He stood there, hands in his pockets, a little awkward, as if he hadn't expected me to answer so quickly. His eyes swept the room behind me, and for a moment he just stared. The tulips, the notebook, the faint smell of fresh bread cooling on the counter. And me, standing straighter, lighter than the last time he saw me. Wow, he murmured. Mom, you look happy. I laughed softly, stepping aside to let him in. I am. He walked in slowly, like he was afraid to disturb the new order of things. His gaze lingered on the notes spread across my table. What's all this? Plans, I said simply. Classes, investments, ideas. A little piece of a cafe, can you believe it? He smiled, shaking his head in quiet disbelief. You've been busy. I touched the tulips, letting the petals brush my fingers. For years, I was busy saving. Now, I'm busy living. He looked at me then, not as a fragile woman who needed care, but as someone strong, vibrant, whole. His expression softened into something between pride and relief, and in that silence I felt it. I wasn't poorer, I was richer than ever, rich in time, in confidence, in the control of my own life. That night, the apartment was quiet, but it was no longer empty. Fresh tulips leaned toward the light from the window. My notebook lay open on the table, pages filled with small beginnings. Plans, classes, investments, ideas. Nothing extraordinary, perhaps, but every line was written by my own hand. For so long, my life was measured in balances and bank books. I believed safety meant love, that saving every dollar was the way to protect my children, to hold a family together. And yet, when I needed love the most, all I heard was, I'm busy. I had begged for presents, not money, and what I received instead was paperwork, proposals, signatures, a joint account that would cage me in the name of care. I still remember the sting when she said, if you're not thinking straight, maybe someone else should take control. That was the moment I realized. If I gave in, I would not just lose my money. I would lose myself. And so I chose differently. I chose to live. To sell the house that haunted me with silence. To put my hands back into life, not just into ledgers. To claim my days, my freedom, my worth. And in doing so, I discovered something no account statement could show me. I was not growing poorer. I was becoming rich again. Rich in time. Rich in courage. Rich in the dignity of deciding for myself. When Daniel walked through my door and said, "Mom, you look happy," I realized he was right. I was. Because for the first time in decades, I was not saving for a future that never arrived. I was living the present I still had. To every woman who sits alone counting what she has left, I want you to know this. Money is not the measure of your life. Your worth is not in signatures or inheritances. It is in the love you give, the courage you take, and the choice to keep living, even when the world tells you you've run out of time. So tonight, as I lay down my pen, I whisper to myself, I would rather die poor and free than live rich in a cage. And in that truth, I have found my freedom. No ledger could ever hold something so precious.